The principal of a Carletonville creche that caused an uproar over videos which showed the beating of a toddler says that she did not know about the alleged abuse. Speaking to the SABC, the principal's lawyer, Danie van Zyl, said that the owner had no knowledge of the video or the abuse. Gauteng Social Development MEC Nandi Mayatulakoza closed the creche yesterday after it was found that it was operating illegally. Meanwhile, a clinical psychologist said that the abuse suffered by toddlers will have a serious impact on their behavioral, mental and emotional well-being. Dr. Shahida Omar, the director of the Teddy Bear Clinic, says that children also learn their behaviors from adults and would want to act it out on other children. Well, for more on this and the impact of abuse on behavioral, mental and emotional well-being of children, we're now joined in studio by clinical psychologist Jeremy Bayer. Jeremy, thanks very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. So let's start with the woman who's seen in the video treating children in this way. And it's difficult to understand for some of us when we see these videos that a grown person could abuse children in this way. Tell us what might cause someone to find themselves that they feel that this is the only way that they can deal or discipline children.
So multiple factors, and one of the reasons we don't see it is because in this country we're quite reactive. We only see it, what it is, and then we react. But actually this has a history. When someone hurts someone with no remorse, you have to look at their upbringing. So what were they watching growing up? Were they beaten as a child, so they're just copying that behavior? The fact that we're living in a country where they maybe not seeing justice done and lawlessness, thinking, well, if I do this, I'll get away with it. Remember, this was filmed, but there might be many more occasions where she did this and it wasn't filmed, so she continually gets away with it. And remember, an abuser or a bully will interpret silence as approval for their behavior and thereby continue to do it. And then in terms of upbringing again, antisocial parents, perhaps the father and mother were, there was no love and would also abuse. And so she might have thought that hitting and hurting was a way of life. This is how you solve conflict, to the point where it becomes embedded in her mindset and in her way of thinking. And then maybe current stress as well. And may I say, none of these are excuses, by the way. This doesn't condone it. But the biggest concern I have is that all of this is done, and it's done repeatedly with no remorse. If someone does something one-off, you know, but when it's done repeatedly with no remorse, that's highly concerning. So,
again, I'm trying to understand, when you look at a child, the most vulnerable of our citizens, you know, you can almost say, you know, if it's an adult on an adult, it's a different level of abuse. But a child that can't defend itself is totally dependent on adults. Is there no ability to see beyond the fact that this is a vulnerable child when they're making these decisions?
There's no ability to do it because of those factors, because of abuse a way of life. She may have been under the influence, I don't know. Like I said, it may have been done to her when she was younger.
So I guess the question is, are we saying that she doesn't think it's wrong?
Probably not, because when you're hurting a child with no remorse, in your mind this is how you solve conflict. This is maybe how I was beaten as a child, therefore this is the way you do it. This is my normal. This is my normal, therefore this is how this child must be treated. So there may have been a lack of remorse, a lack of emotion coaching when she was younger. The parents may have not have taught her empathy growing up, or have allowed her to express her feelings. And all of that combined might have become so embedded in her that this is in her sort of thinking that this is how you solve issues.
Then there's a person who did the filming. And I'm just wondering, I mean, you know, if it's aiding and abetting because you were there, you didn't stop it, you didn't report it. Is the psychology slightly different there to actually film this?
No, the psychology is the psychology of a bully setting. Remember, you always have the bully, and then they're like 2IC. So the moment she's filming, she's saying, I approve of your behavior, carry on. So in any situation, you'll always have the bully and their helper.
Right.
And then obviously the inactive bystanders, which will mean it'll carry on. That's why I keep coming back to a bully will interpret silence as approval for their behavior. So that's a classic bully scenario. The 2 versus 1, numerical mismatch, and then the 2 I see who is helping the bully. It may have happened to her when she was at school, and also she might be afraid of the caregiver. So she might be so subservient and scared to stand up for herself that she actually helps her, which makes it even worse because that's a kind of microcosm of our society. The bullies get away with it and everyone stays silent. Symbolic of what goes on here.
So the principal says that she didn't know it was happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, it may be true. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. But when you're working with children, I would imagine that once a child is abused, their behavior changes and there are telltale signs that you as a caregiver should be able to say, hang on, something is not okay here.
Well, that's my concern in many of these schools is the lack of knowledge around these places. A lot of that is because of inequality. So in these schools, there's no social workers or psychologists, educational psychologists to be more specific. And so because of that, the behavior continues. So they're not spotting this, and no one's, like you say, educated enough to see it. And so the behavior continues. Also, what's her leadership like anyway? What is the leader demanding? 2, what has this person been allowed to get away with previously? In other words, what is her history? Does she have a history of bad behavior, whether it's shouting, being aggressive, calls? All of those things are a precursor to this type of behavior. This doesn't just happen in isolation. It doesn't come out of nowhere. So you have to ask questions about the leadership and the culture in the school. It's the same in a high school where there's a bully culture. What's happening from leadership? What's the culture like? The same thing here. What has she been allowed to get away with persistently? Because this doesn't come out of nowhere.
All right, so I would imagine a lot of the patients that you see probably are the victims. And I just wonder, someone like the abuser in this case, can they be helped? Can you rework the way that they think?
Well, put it this way, I'll never say they can't be helped. I'm not going to say there's no hope. Symptoms may include things like excessive bedwetting, nightmares, or insomnia, sleepless nights, and of course issues relating to attachment. So the moment the child's away from a parent, there might be excessive crying or symptoms such as that. They can get helped with the process of play therapy with an educational psychologist, because of course you won't see it in talking with a child that young. So yes, I will say that they can get help, but it has to happen as soon as possible, because the longer you leave this, the symptoms then may persist to the point where the kid might be scared to go to school.
And they may become the abuser in the future.
Which often happens, or either that, or you've got the risk of childhood depression and nagging self-criticism later on, or self-blame. Was it me who caused it? Those types of things. So those are concerning things.
Final question. The abuser herself, can she be helped? And if she's found guilty, she may go to jail. She needs actual medical assistance more than spending time in a cell. Yeah,
look, and my concern is the restorative justice in those prisons. Is there help? Are there psychologists or social workers that can help her? So she does need assistance. I will never ever say in a democracy that no one must ever get help, ever. Yes, it's deplorable and shocking what she's done, but there needs to be help in those systems, because that is why they're called correctional services, to be helped. Unfortunately, I don't know if there is that, but yes, she can get helped. It's going to be extensive and long-term, but justice has to see this out. But on a macro level, I'm concerned with A, the lawlessness, and B, that there's a culture of how do you deal with things through violence. That's the bigger picture here.
Jeremy, we're going to have to leave it there. It's a heartbreaking story, and I dare say sometimes there's victims all everywhere, even the abusers themselves usually sometimes abuse
often come
victims
from abusive
as well.
homes, often.
All right. Jeremy, thanks so much. Pleasure talking to you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Okay, it's time for us